there's a lot of things. Well, I work with sound, most sound with text sound or voice sound, and then I do visual work, like visual poetry, interactive computer stuff, work on the internet, so there's a lot of things actually. And I consider myself as a poet, so I started writing poetry on paper and then somehow got bored with that, so I started to make experimental poetry and then sound poetry, so not writing anymore but speaking into a microphone, working with computer programs to modify it. And then I also started to create software to make poetic software, so to say. So software that produces poetry or is poetry or like that. When I discovered that I was getting bored with normal poetry, I was researching what other people have done or what could be interesting. And there's a big Austrian tradition in writing experimental poetry and creating poetry that was more listening to the sound of language than just writing meaningful sentences. And so I started to listen to other people's work and discovered that I liked it. But then I thought, okay, that has been done 40 years ago, so I have to think of something new. And I was also studying computer science, so that was the somehow natural combination of computers and this traditional work, but doing it differently with the help of computers. Well, I do a couple of performances, but the performance I will do today is kind of the combination of sound poetry and visual poetry, but also then the software aspect. So I wrote a software, a performance software, where I can make letters appear on the screen, and when I speak into the microphone, the sound gets attached to the letter, and so the letter moves on the screen, and when it hits the wall of the screen, for example, then it replays the sound, and then hits the other wall, and then the letters hit each other. So there's always, I can control the software, but not totally. So they have, each letter has its, kind of like an animal. They move around, or they fall down, they bounce off the wall, left and right, things like that. So I can control the whole thing in a way, but not every tiny detail. So it's like working with, another improviser. So I improvise, and the computer helps me improvise or works against it or something like that. And I do it. The whole thing is an improvisation. I have some kind of idea how it will work out, but usually I change in the middle of the piece. I change some aspects, or I discover something that I want to continue. So it's not a fixed piece that I just execute. It's more like I start with something, and then I listen to the sounds, I look on the screen how it looks like, and then change the whole thing. So it's really a performance. It's not reading a poem, but it's a performance that happens right there. So, and I cannot repeat it. So it's every time it's different. So you have these letters, and you can throw in the A, for example. I have to have developed several, like the one, maybe I can show it, that's the easiest. So the one is similar. You can throw in the A, for example. Wait, there's no sound. It's out. Okay, now it's the sound. So when it hits the wall, it makes the sound. You can drop in other ones. and it's kind of, or the different ones like those. So it's a little bit similar to the performance, but smaller, of course. It's kind of, so it's visual and with sound. You can also kill some. So yeah, that's one of the applications. That's maybe the most famous one, so to say. I didn't. I was the editor together with Günther Wallaster. So we two kind of asked people to contribute to this anthology of visual poetry, and the idea was not to because there is a long tradition as well, like in sound poetry. But we wanted to ask people who are still alive, who we knew, who we liked, to contribute something that is contemporary. So I also asked a lot of people who are maybe not visual poets, but fine artists working with text, or a lot of people from the electronic poetry community, because I knew that they had some different perspective on the whole thing. Like the visual poets, they have all this tradition, but were people coming from the computer side, they just do things differently, and it's. I think it turned out quite well. So it's kind of an unusual view on visual poetry. And I think it's about 80 people in there, so it's a lot of people contributing, and very, very different. Like some people work with, for example, with books. They're cut out books, or Jave is just rendering some three-dimensional typefaces and then modifying it. So it's a very diverse thing. Yeah, a lot of techniques, a lot of some are only black and white, some are very colorful, and or Nick Manfard is. He's just, here's the Perl program, and that just generates the thing, so there's also the program already inside. Just the first line is the program, and you can execute it, and then it produces these things. It's a very, very computer-rich way of thinking. Yeah, and very international, so there are people from, not all over the world, but from Europe, America, and some other places. Now there are a lot of people working with computers, but it was not like that all the time. So because in the 50s they didn't have computers, or they didn't have access to computers, and computers were not able to process sound. So that's maybe the last 20 years it started somehow to.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because before that you could create maybe synthesizer sounds, but not really work that easy with language. So that's quite a new development in a way. But to be honest, I don't have cannot tell a history of it. It's more like I know some certain people who I like, but I'm not sure if that's historically relevant or anything. But a lot of people working with computers refer to, I don't know, Henri Chopin, for example, who used tape recorders, and that was very influential for younger people that work with computers now. But yeah, history. It would be interesting to make. I don't know if there is a research project researching contemporary sound poetry relating to the history. That would be interesting to find out how the computer influenced these works. But I don't have anything like that to contribute here.
Okay.